Welcome back to another episode of the Heroes Veritas podcast. I'm your host, Tim Bass. And before we get started, I did want to give out a couple announcements. First and foremost, the May event, which we will be having a May 7th through May 9th, will be a 3-day field immersion. It will be a good time. We'll have a hike, we'll have some skill development, and we'll end it off with a feast and then some cleanup. That registration is open right now. So if you haven't checked it out already, we are looking for a minimum of 12 people in order to go forward with it. If we don't get that 12 people, we will have to go ahead and cancel it. So we hope to see you there at the Setting the Perimeter event, May 7th through the 9th, registration on our website. Second announcement is I just got word that we will be having our first interview with a very special guy who I respect and find a lot of value in. So he'll be joining us on the podcast here in the next month or so, and I'm really excited to share that with you guys. So be sure to subscribe and get on the newsletter so that we can keep you up to date. All right, now that the announcements are out of the way, today was a great day because I got out into the woods, got to do a hike, got stalked by something. I'm not exactly sure what. Could be a predator, could be not a predator, but it was kind of eerie walking through the pathway with my dog. And all of a sudden the entire forest goes absolutely silent for about 30-40 yards. And then all of a sudden, just as quickly as it went silent, the birds came back and all the sounds of the forest came back. So that was a little unnerving. It's kind of a weird thing when you're going through a nature tunnel and all of a sudden you have this deafening silence, for lack of a better term, where you automatically know something's wrong and your heart kind of gets pumping. And so that was kind of a cool experience going into shooting this podcast tonight. So today we are getting into the very first, not deep dive, but kind of ancillary concepts of Heroes Veritas. This will be the first one that is very specific to Heroes Veritas. While it is very generalized, it's the first one that isn't agnostic or amoral. It does fall along with our honor system. The previous podcasts, which were the 4 foundational virtues, as well as kind of explaining what we were trying to do, they did lack a little bit of Heroes Veritas personality. It didn't have me in it. It didn't have how I see things. And as a result, I think we've lost a little bit of the value for some people because it was a very high level concept for a lot. However, I still think we hit the nail on the head with the first 4 virtues, and I think it's going to give the foundation for us to move forward with the other stuff. So today we're going to be talking about tactics over theatrics, the idea that you have to do something, not just talk about it. This is something that came up in my mind as something very critical that I see a lot of, and also have been guilty of in the past. We let our egos get away with us and we start living in a fantasy world that, luckily, if you live in the United States or any other first world country, you have the luxury to live in. However, the biggest detriment to that is to your own capacity, your own capabilities, because that is where the comfort zone exists, is in that fantasy world. And when I talk about masculinity and when I talk about reclaiming masculinity, one of the biggest things that I would hope to see Heroes Veritas help other men do is achieve. Not just achieve what we want, right? I talked about in a recent video on our social media about meeting people where they are, but really understanding that where we live today, we spend a lot of time either talking about doing cool stuff, wishing we could go do cool stuff, dreaming about doing cool stuff, but we don't spend as much time, which is ironic given how much information is out there to learn new things and to grow and to do things, actually doing it. And so one of the first cautions that I wanted to bring up in this episode is don't get so blinded by your ego that you don't check in with yourself and actually analyze your skill sets. One thing that this comes up a lot is men's ability to protect, men's ability to fend off an attacker, men's ability to whatever the case is, protect the people or protect the things that they love. And for some reason, and again, I'm guilty of this too, for no reason based in logic, we automatically think that if some guy is going to attack us, we're somehow going to know how to defend ourselves. We're automatically going to know what to do in that situation. We're going to know how to manage our adrenaline rush, which a lot of guys don't realize happens in the middle of a conflict when they haven't experienced it. And that rush of adrenaline, your body responds differently than when you haven't. One, if you've never been in that situation, you don't know what that looks like. So that's where panic comes from, is too much adrenaline flow into the body without actually any muscle memory to go behind it, because the frontal lobe basically shuts down, the logic side basically shuts down, and you revert to whatever your body's used to in a quick reflex state. So this idea that when something pops off or something occurs or something happens, that they're just gonna know what to do, and they're just going to jump into the fight and know exactly how to handle themselves, and they're going to come out on top. And one of my favorite quotes in line with that is, we don't rise to the occasion, we revert to our training. And the biggest caution that I tell everybody is, one, you don't know how you would behave in one situation or another until you're actually in that situation. There's a lot of guys that talk big that have never actually been in that situation. Man, I would have done this, I would have done that. That's a dangerous game to play, not only with people around you, because you're going to come off as arrogant, but also with yourself, because you're going to put yourself into a situation where maybe you're in over your head and you don't know what the hell you're talking about and you don't know what you're doing. Two, if you've never actually spent the time to develop those skills, what are you actually leveraging during that encounter? What are you actually leveraging in the event that skill is needed? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a violent encounter. I'm just using that as an example. This could be a survival situation. This could be a car accident. This could be somebody got, a cut or that they're losing a lot of blood at the workplace, whatever the case is. Maybe they're choking and you've never actually learned the Heimlich or CPR or how to use an AED. Yet somehow you miraculously are going to jump into that situation and be Johnny on the spot, the white knight and hero of the day, and save everybody. And what I found more often than not is that disparagement. Is that the right way to use that disparagement? I don't know. I wish I knew the word that I'm trying to say, but it's basically a disparage between the two spaces. And you have the situation that arises and your skill level. And most guys that I've seen that have never been in those situations or those types of situations do one of two things. They either freeze and they don't know what to do, so they don't do anything, and they just kind of stare on and they don't know what to do. They forget how to do basic logical stuff like calling 911 or asking for help or checking if somebody's breathing, things of that nature. Or two, they do get involved, but then they get stuck and then they panic, and then they start to go into shock. They start to get, put themselves into a position where they can do more harm than good. And in those situations, you really need to have a certain level of leadership to be able to snap those kind of guys back, because those are the guys that are going to be really helpful. Give them a task, you call 911, or, you stop the bleeding, or you put your hand here, hold pressure. Give them very deliberate tasks. And that willingness that they initially showed, but now is being held back by shock or fear, you can leverage that to give them very specific tasks. And they're gonna do it to the best of their ability, because they're so one-track mind within that adrenaline. So from that caution, I got a little off topic there, but from that caution, develop your skill set. And, I see this happen a lot of times where everybody waits until the moment that they need it to go and try and get something. We saw this a lot last year with COVID of everybody was freaking out because they didn't know what was going to happen. So they went and got toilet paper was hard to find for literally 6 to 8 months. Cleaning supplies were hard to find for 6 to 8 months. Food was difficult to find for the first month and a half of the lockdowns. And that was all a response to a lack of preparedness. People that were prepared for years and just, they know how to keep themselves ready for when something that could happen happens. They weren't worried as much as the people who felt like the world was going to be sunshine and rainbows forever. So develop those skill sets. Get out of your own head. Start getting in the game. It could be as simple as watching YouTube videos or reading. They've actually done studies where the human brain can actually run scenarios hypothetically, whether that's how do I respond to, a knife attack or a punch or somebody pushing me, or even like, what do I do if, somebody's not stopping at a stop sign? They've run studies psychologically and neurologically that the brain can actually create pathways to activity just by learning via academics or reading, and then creating that scenario and running it through multiple times just in your mind. Your body's going to be that much more primed to handle that situation than if somebody who's never thought of it before. So just reading, just creating a connection to the content of basic self-defense skills, basic survival skills, basic first aid, basic triage, those things can really support you. And then from there, it also helps facilitate that journey of, let me go find more information. Let me find the enjoyment piece. So go and, if you have, so I this whole caution was don't rely on your ego to get you through a hard situation. Actually take the time and prepare for situations that you want to be good at. If you don't want to fight, if you want to be the guy that walks away, then don't go prepare. If you want to be the guy bleeding on the ground getting his ass kicked, don't go prepare. If you want to be the guy cold and hungry in the event of total blackout for whatever reason, don't go prepare. But if you want to be the guy who protects and provides, then you need to prepare. You need to make a conscious effort to get the skill set. Second, we as men have replaced true true development with fantasy development. Okay, when I say tactics over theatrics, tactics is visceral, it's real, it's something tangible, it's something you can go do, it's something you can develop. Theatrics is a guy who plays Call of Duty but thinks he could live in war. A guy who plays hand-to-hand combat games like a Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat but thinks he can handle himself. Or plays, a survival game and thinks he'd be good at a zombie apocalypse. But he has no actual connection to real-world skills other than joysticks. That's theatrics. We live in this fantasy world, and we've created this connection. And don't get me wrong, I love video games, but they have their place, their recreation. They are not skill development. We've gotten into this mode where video games is now heralded as, hand-eye coordination is developed. And so people who play video games, their brains work faster and things like that. And that's all of us just stroking our own egos to say, yeah, it's okay that I play video games instead of going and developing more skills. I'm not saying you don't play video games. I know a lot of groups that demonize video games as, the end of the world. But what I'm saying is you need to find a balance of those video games and actually learning how to do the things that you think you're doing so well in that game. You'll find it's way harder, but it's also way more rewarding. So I'm going to leave you on that. I don't want to beat this one to death. I did that with the other things. Don't let your ego be the enemy of your skill set. Our egos will tell us to avoid learning new things because we're afraid of being wrong or looking stupid. But nothing will look more stupid than you bleeding on the ground or you dying because you froze to death because you didn't know the basics of hyperthermia or first aid. So don't let your ego stop you from learning stuff that could save your life, but also just stuff that you want to learn. Playing guitar, mountain biking, I don't know, pick a hobby. But all of us have our egos. We care so much about how other people think about us. We don't go try the shit that we want to try because we're afraid we're going to get laughed at. Go get laughed at. Go try the hard shit. Don't say no to opportunities. Go do shit. And 2, unplug from fantasy. Unplug from the instantaneous satisfaction of the dopamine hit. And I'm talking social media, I'm talking video games, I'm talking whatever that instant gratification vice is. Go try some hard shit. And the reason I say that is because it will cultivate a mindset of grit and perseverance to go through something, and you'll understand the reward of trying something hard. So stop living in the fantasy world, start working in the real world. One of the biggest shifts for me was when I was 300 pounds, was realizing I was playing a video game to feel good about being the hero in that video game. And all that time that I was spending on this pixelated character, I could have been spending on my own life and becoming the hero of my life. And that's what I did. I went to the gym. I lost weight. I learned different protocols for body mechanics. I learned nutrition. I learned all those things. And then I turned it into a job, and I was a personal trainer, and I helped other people do that. I built a business, and that was good. It failed. I'm not going to lie to you. It failed. It failed because of my shortcomings, and that's okay. I learned. And if you guys want help, reach out. How do you get started? Reach out. I'll give you guidance. I will help. That's why I'm here. But it's time to get out of the fantasy world, get in the real world. Tactics over theatrics. Go get shit done.